There's one last thing that I don't think I touched on, but like one thing is, especially if you're positioning yourself as a conversion copywriter, that you should have a basic understanding of like analytics and statistics. So again, don't have to go take a statistics course or anything like that, but like you should know what things mean. Like you should know what it means if someone's like, someone runs an A/B test and they say like, okay, like this beat the control, but it wasn't statistically significant. Like you should know what that means. And that doesn't, again, not taking a course, you don't have to sign up for like go to your local college, university for a stats class, anything like that. But you do have to understand like, okay, what, like when people run an A/B test, what does the outcome mean? When one page beats the other, do you know that's a trustworthy result or a statistically significant result or not? You should just know those basic things, and conversion rate, like very basic stuff, doesn't take a long time to learn, but you have to be able to speak to it and understand what it means if you're, especially if you have clients who are running tests and things like that. You should just have a basic sense, be able to participate in the conversation, basically.
Yeah, and I guess even having enough knowledge to talk people down from doing tests. It's a reflex for a lot of people to be like, yeah, we want to figure out a better way of doing this homepage, so we're going to do an A/B test, and then you find out. So you have 1,000 people visiting your site each month and about 40 conversions a month. So we're going to run this test for like 2 years, or like the whole
Right,
world
you're
will
going
have
to
changed in
change.
2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So,
that kind of stuff is hard to, it's kind of hard to learn, but one thing you could do is like you can just open up, you just look at like a what is it, like an A/B test calculator, I guess it's
oh
called.
yeah, there's plenty.
And just like if you just play around with it, you'll sort of start to get a sense of like what makes sense. And so you'll see that it's like, and just as a side note, like usually a test is feasible if you can run it like within about a month.
Yeah.
And if you don't have enough traffic or enough conversions or enough of a difference between the between what you're testing, um, you're not going to be able to do that. And so, yeah, 100%. I have clients all the time like that, where it's like, oh, we'll just test it. And then you look and it's like something like what you described, and it's going to take a long time. Or if it's shorter, it's, you're just not going to get a reliable result. So A/B testing, I think when I started conversion copywriting, I was assuming that every SaaS company with a website was running A/B tests all the time. It's just not the case.
No,
The more
I'll
advanced
actually,
ones
yeah,
are, but with a lot of traffic, but plenty of them are doing no such thing.
full confession, there's very little A/B testing. In my experience, and that's even with some really good clients that have the traffic. And the reason for that is they just don't want to invest in multiple versions, or what they're doing is the pages that we're working on are 3 years old, and there's just so much that has changed. It does not make sense to just test some small difference versus it, because we need an overhaul at that point. A lot
Yeah,
has
just
changed.
blow it up and write a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in the future, they might do some small tests like internally with their marketing team, like let's change the headline or whatever it is they want to do. So yeah, A/B tests, knowing when to do them, knowing how to do them, understanding like how to manipulate all the different variables that will help you get to statistical significance. Like if you're low traffic, low conversion, you have to go for a much bigger lift in order to see that statistical significance. In order to do that, you're probably going to have to change a lot about the page. And then the trade-off there is that even if you win, you won't know why necessarily, because you changed so
Yeah.
much. And
Right, right,
so,
right.
yeah, just you don't need to know like p values and all the different tests and stuff like that off the top of your head, but like you should kind of understand how the pieces all work together, and the trade-offs that you make. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess under that same category would be like watching user sessions using something like Hotjar or Full Story. That's kind of like analytics, but yeah, knowing how to actually go in there, focus in on the right sessions, and pull some of the insights out. Like I often find, I don't know, what's your experience with watching sessions? Like, do you find them super useful these days?
Not usually. So if someone has full story or something like that, I will go through and watch a handful. And sometimes I'll play around with like the journey a little bit. So I'll be like, all right, so for people who do convert, like, what does that look like? Are they clicking around to all these different pages? Is it a fairly quick thing or not? But, I think if I'm being perfectly honest, like, we've talked about some other things like wireframing, or in the case of like analytics, where we're trying to figure out information that's going to inform what we're creating, like customer interviews and things like that. Like, if I have to choose between watching recorded sales calls and watching recordings of people use the website, every single time I'm going to take the recorded sales calls.
Me too.
So I don't want to create the impression that like learning how to use some of these fancy analytics tools, whatever it is, Hotjar, Full Story, that is like a crucial or core part of being a copywriter. I guarantee you there are successful B2B SaaS copywriters who have never opened Hotjar or have never opened Full Story, and still do a bang up job every time. So I don't want to mislead people into thinking that it's like super important, at least not to my process. There are plenty of projects where I don't use any screen recordings, things like that. Heat maps I find a little bit more useful on longer pages, because you can see if there's a certain spot where you're losing everyone. But I think that those tools should take, or those skills rather, should probably take a little bit of a backseat to things like like the table stakes skills we talked about, and then like wireframing, client management, those kinds of things.
100%. Yeah, I agree.